call this special meeting of council to order at 12 p.m. First of all, I need a motion to waive the minutes from the last council meeting. Councillor Buds, could you read the resolution, please?
Resolved that the adoption of the minutes of December 13th, 2021 regular meeting of council be waived until the next regular meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Meyer. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for conditional use PC 6321. This is for Prairie Vineyard Church Warming Center. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing?
I could answer questions. Unless
Okay.
you want me to speak, I could.
Okay, thank you. Could we have your name for the record, ma'am?
Yeah, it's Marianne Galson.
Marianne Galston. Okay, thank you. Did council have any questions for the proponent? Councillor Meyer?
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Galston, for attending. The question that I have is in relationship to, obviously, the motion that will be brought forth, not so much about the motion, but is your plan to use this as a shelter year-round?
No, we're looking at it. It's considered a warming center, and so we're looking at, -10 and colder until the end of March. March 31st is what we've got it kind of set for. So it's just those really cold months is what we're looking at. No, it wouldn't be year-round.
Thank you. That's it, Your Worship.
And Councillor Buds, you had a question?
Thank you. So I assume that you've had an opportunity to review some of the letters of objections and concerns raised. Do you have any commentary that would address some of these concerns?
I'm sorry, I had just got a call saying that there was some questions, so I didn't see any. Was it sent to us, or I didn't see any of the questions. So, yeah, I had just, 10 minutes ago I found out that there was some questions, but I haven't even heard them. So
Okay, thank you.
that's,
There were more questions from council?
Is there something that I should be responding to in those questions?
Well, there's two letters. We're going to have those read into the record. Yeah, we'll have those read into the record right now. Oh, Councillor Knox?
Hi, yes, sorry. So who approached you about doing this again, or is this something that you decided on your own? Like, what is the current need in the community? Because I do know that our point in time count is pretty low, so I'm just curious where this
It kind of comes from that we have had some people that we've direct contact with that have been on the street and they've been concerned. So we've had 3 that we've been in connection with, and that's where it came out of. And all of a sudden it came to me, I know in the city that they have a warming center. So when I talked to them, and how did they do it? And it was very simple. There's no food, there's no bedding. There's just a mat, and they come in and sleep, and it's, like we're opening at 9 at night, and they can just sleep. So, no, there wasn't specific, but everyone I've talked to them at the hospital, I've talked to RCMP, I've talked to different ones, and they're just so happy to have something happening. And I did get a lady come to me and say, what are we going to do? What is happening? So, yeah, there has been some.
Councillor Knox?
So, will it be staffed with during that time? But no, it's not acting as a shelter.
Right.
Specifically warming.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Warming center, warm sleep. We will have 2 volunteers there at all times. Otherwise, it will be closed. We can't have them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, could I have those 2 letters we received read into the record?
We received 2 letters of objection. The first letter was from Owen Scatfeld, and his letter reads, "To whom it may concern, my name is Owen Scatfeld, and I own the property at 128 Dufferin Avenue East. I am against the idea of 109 Duke becoming a day use / warming center. I strongly believe that this is a backdoor way or soft approach in turning it into another shelter. It is my opinion that the Portage tried shelters recently, and it became an attraction drawing people from other cities and communities to use it. This experiment did nothing to better the city of Portage la Prairie and its citizens. In fact, it added to a negative image that people not from Portage have of this community. In addition, I feel this will negatively affect my property at 128 Dufferin. When 109 Duke Avenue was a shelter in the past, I had to repair a fence several times, plus ask people to leave a wooded area on this property. This fence separates 128 Dufferin from an apartment building on Countess, so the fence is to the north of 128 Dufferin. It is, in my opinion, that the fence boards were removed to make a more direct walking path to the shelter. People were also using the wooded area to drink alcohol and do illegal drugs. Beer bottles and several needles have been cleaned up by myself and others in that wooded area. I have since cut down low-lying branches and a tree so as to open the area up to deter this behavior. Therefore, it is my experience 109 Duke Avenue, and let's call it what the conditional use is intended for, as a shelter. It is not good for the neighborhood or city. I do not support this application. Thank you. Owen Scatfeld. The second letter that we received of objection is from Jeff Dubois and from Mackenzie's Portage Funeral Chapel. I received a letter regarding the conditional use of the Prairie Vineyard Christian Fellowship as an emergency warming shelter. I have concerns over this application due to the past and current situation at this location. Behind the building, ever since it was first used as a shelter, has been a place for individuals to sleep, hang out, use drugs, and leave a mess. It has been so bad that our staff at Mackenzie's, when called upon to work on or respond to a call in the night, feel unsafe. I want to let you know I'm totally aware that a shelter is needed in this community, but if one is to exist, there must be proper measures put in place so the neighborhood and property remains safe. And I do not blame the property owner, as they have removed items and cleaned the property numerous times. Please see the first email and pictures of complaint in October of 2020. Hi, Preston. As per our conversation, would you be able to look into the property at 107 Duke Avenue, former Prairie Vineyard Church and temporary homeless shelter? The untidy part of the property is located in the back in the southwest corner. See attached pictures. Since the above complaint, I have called the RCMP twice for disturbances behind the property. They responded and removed the persons involved. And most recent, on Thursday, December 16, 2021, evening of early hours of December 17, 2021, they trespassed our property to access electricity. RCMP were once called again and responded. Please see attached pictures. In conclusion, I want the Portage Planning District to be aware of this situation behind the Prairie Vineyard Christian Church, and with this information can make a decision to ensure this does not continue to happen, and also ensure the safety of the staff at Mackenzie's Portage Funeral Chapel and members of the community in Portage. Please feel free to contact me if you have any further information or questions or concerns. Thanks, Jeff Dubois, Mackenzie's Portage Funeral Chapel.
Further questions from council? Councillor Wall?
Well, it sounds like a couple of different problems because the problem Mr. Dubois is talking about has been ongoing while this place has not been used for a shelter. So that's one problem. The other thing that I see and is that there's no timeline attached to this application. The previous one was for 3 months. And I really believe we need some place for people to get in out of the cold and not freeze to death at night. But the problem is not what's going on at night while these folks are sleeping and they're supervised. The problem is during the day. And I don't know what that facility is used for during the day or if it's not used at all. But that seems to be where the problem was.
Could, I believe a rep from the planning district's here. Could we just get clarification on the time frame for March 31st?
There was no timeframe put in place. Council,
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, you're good.
there was no timeline put in place for this application. If council so wishes, they may put a condition on their recommendation.
Okay, thank you. But just point of clarification, so the request was to operate this as a warming shelter until March 31st, 2022?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Knox?
Have you reached out to the Reaching Home program with PCRC? They're the ones working with our homeless population yet, and have you got their take on this?
Yes, I've been in contact with Mary Lawrence, and so yeah, they're like when actually she contacted me first, and like she said, their program doesn't fit these particular people. They kind of fall out of those parameters, but you know, as they come, I've got information to give the people that are coming, so that they can move on, and we've got a whole list of different things that they can access in the city. Could I make a comment about the letters?
Yes,
There.
absolutely.
And it has gotten away from us. We were pretty shocked last week. We happened to land at the church while the bylaw officer, when they came. And Mark is here from the church too, and so he was going to, him and his wife were going to go and clean up. We had a few hours to clean up, and it was just overwhelming. And I was thinking as I was coming here that I just, you know, we probably need to apologize to the neighbors. It's just, we don't go back there, and we're not there usually too often during the day. And I think maybe, I mean, I think I can speak for, we could find people to go and check around the building more often throughout the rest of the year. And we did have that fellow the one summer, and we tried, we talked to him, the police came. And so, yeah, I agree with the neighbors. It has been out of hand, but you know, it's out of sight, out of mind at the back. It used to be previous, my husband and I, we owned the apartment block next door. So we had an eye on all of that, and that's not really happening. So we have to be more diligent, I think, as a church. And so, yeah, we haven't heard these complaints. I mean, besides from the police, we had calls and have cleaned up on occasion too. We took a whole trailer of stuff out one time, so yeah. But yeah, it is something we need to be more diligent about too.
Further questions from council? Councillor Knox?
Maybe this is directed to Fire Chief Carpenter. Just wondering how much time maybe our bylaw how many times they're being called to this location or dealing with situations over there lately?
No, you don't.
As mentioned, we weren't made aware of it. It is kind of hidden at the back of the church. I was actually there at the time when this happened as well. So once it was identified, bylaw came and they so kindly cleaned it up right away. But again, as far as I know, they haven't been made aware of it in the past to address it.
Thank you.
Further questions from council? Okay. Is Councillor Knox?
Sorry, I have another question. So when we talk about putting a time, like the ability to put a timeline on this, or can we also put things like conditions, like if all of a sudden, you know, there was this sort of camp made behind and our bylaw was getting involved, that we could have the ability to sort of kibosh it at any time? Do we have that ability?
We have the ability to put conditions on this conditional use. Sure, we can, but have to be realistic. This is, you know, you're talking about people making a judgment call, basically, on, you're going to put a number. If bylaw has to go 5 times, then that's the number. So I would caution council in putting too many conditions on a conditional use. It's got to be pretty clear cut, so administration and our teams understand exactly the parameters that they're working within.
Councillor Wall?
Yeah, I think any conditions should be conditions that would prevent this from becoming a problem in the future, rather than dealing with it when it becomes a problem. I don't know if somebody can be there every day to have a look and check on this and make sure it doesn't get out of hand again, but that seems to be the problem, what's happening during the day, not what's happening at night when these folks are asleep.
Your Worship,
Councillor Meyer?
if I could call a point of order, if we could actually get the motion on the table and then have the discussion in relationship to the motion?
Good point. Thank you, Councillor Meyer.
Well, if we're talking about
But
proper order, we should probably close the public hearing first.
before we close it, is there anyone else here to speak to the public hearing, for or against?
Did you want? He's kind of, we're from the Prairie Vineyard, so
Okay,
he's in favor.
okay. Seeing nobody else to speak to the public hearing, need a motion to close the public hearing?
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and be it resolved, and I so move that the public hearing for conditional use PC 63-21 for Prairie Vineyard Church Warming Center now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer, second by Councillor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Okay, Council, you've, in front of you, you'll see the report to Council from the Planning Economic Development Committee, which is a request for conditional use from the Prairie Vineyard Christian Fellowship for 109 Duke Avenue, Lot 1, Plan 41708. So, as we've heard, the issue is to allow for an emergency warming shelter as an accessory use. And as always, our alternatives are to approve the conditional use as it's presented, to approve the conditional use application with conditions, or to deny the conditional use application outright. So as you've heard the background, the Prairie Vineyard Christian Fellowship have applied for a conditional use to allow this church to become an emergency warming shelter as an accessory use. If you go back in the minutes, there was a conditional use for a similar use at this location back in 2019, and the minute references are there for your reference as well. Excuse me. That order stated, though, that the emergency shelter was used for a maximum of 3 months, and that all fire and life safety issues were to be reviewed and addressed. The planning district and the fire department did attend and assured that the life safety issues were reviewed and addressed back in 2019. The applicant does go on to further say that they've indicated it's a maximum of 10 people would be only permitted on any given night, with 2 volunteers providing supervision throughout. The applicant has stated the hours of operation would also only be between 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. They have been in contact with the RCMP. They do express that any belligerent behaviors would not be tolerated and the RCMP would be called to handle these types of situations. This use would be open for the winter months only, approximately from November through to March of early year. The property is located in the C2 Central Commercial Zone. The application was circulated to various city departments. There were no concerns. Public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius. You've heard the two letters, one of the letter of objection from Owen Scafeld. The other one, even though it's characterized as a letter of objection, I just maybe, and I cannot, of course, speak for the writer, but I don't take it as a letter of objection. I take it as a letter of clarity and a letter of concern. And I would trust that those would have been addressed. With that said, back to this. The administrative recommendation, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the conditional use application of Prairie Vineyard Christian Fellowship to allow for an emergency warming shelter as an accessory use in a C2 or central commercial zone at the property 109 Duke Avenue, which is legally described as Lot 1, Plan 41708 in the parish of Portage la Prairie, with the condition that no more than 10 people per night be allowed and hours of operation to be from 9 p.m. until 8 a.m.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Questions or comments on the motion?
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to include timelines that this approval would expire, March 31st, 2021?
2022.
2022, sorry, yeah. I'm a year behind. And I guess the way it's written, we can't modify it in too many ways, but we certainly can add that timeline to it. So that would be my my motion.
Okay. Amendments moved by Councillor Wall, seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the amendment? All those in favor of the amended motion? And that's carried.
Excuse me, Your Honor, that was, or Your Worship, that was an approval of the amendment. Now we have to vote on the motion as amended.
Any questions or comments on the amended motion? Councillor Espy?
Not necessarily directly related to the amendment and the motion itself, but this is a very temporary fix to an ongoing problem in our community, and I'm just wondering if there's been any work done to try to come up with a more long-term solution.
PCRC couldn't be here this morning. I talked to them this morning, and they have found permanent housing for a large number of homeless people. They did mention that probably the clients for this project, if it was to go ahead, it's very challenging to find them permanent housing. So they have been doing some work. I don't know all the details of it, but there is some work being done, and you're right, it is a long-term problem.
I guess my question is more towards the city itself than the PCRC. And has anyone reached out to the organizations that maybe should be at the table to solve this issue, which is the RHA or CMHA?
Did you want to comment on that?
So the question about homelessness in our community is something that we have primarily deferred to PCRC, but the city manager, who I'm acting for right now, does have ongoing discussions with the executive director at PCRC regarding that as to a more longer-term solution. And as you know, we did have the shelter in the downtown, but because of the funding discontinued from the federal government, the shelter did close. But I agree with you, the problem is not going away, and we're continuing to discuss some potential solutions.
Further questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Okay, our next item of new business is the Crescent Lake Causeway funding, and this is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Your Worship. The issue here is to obtain approval to withdraw funds from the Canada Community Building Fund Reserve, formerly what we used to call the Fuel Tax Reserve, for the Crescent Lake project. So, as detailed in Council's reports that have previously presented, the Crescent Lake Causeway project will be funded with additional reserve funds and a lesser amount of borrowing. So with the completion of the functioning lighting system, which, you know, a lot of it got energized just this week, the overall project, the overall cost of this project since 2018 is just shy of $9 million. Specifically for 2021 and comparing to budget, you see the schedule there basically outlining that. Borrowing resolution was finalized, and now we need to complete the final authorization process to use an additional $1.41 million from that reserve for this project to be in compliance with regulatory requirements. And so payments is, you know, we used to talk about the fuel tax payments coming in annually. Those payments for this project's borrowing will be made over the next 2 years, and from these contributions, which are received annually from the federal government. So we get the money, it'll be going towards this. So as a result, this project will be fully funded by the federal government. And so it is the recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the withdrawal of $1,410,000 from CCBF Reserve to complete the final funding approval for the Crescent Lake Causeway project.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Our third and final item of new business is the 2022 emergency plan, and this is Public Safety Committee. Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Worship. We do have need to do our approval of our 2022 emergency plan, which we do every year. The Manitoba Emergency Measures Organization requires all municipalities to submit their emergency response plan annually with a deadline of December 31st. So administration has reviewed the City of Portage la Prairie emergency plan and has made any revisions required, such as updating contact info. Once accepted by Council, the internal version of the plan will be sent to EMO for their records. The public version of the plan is attached with the agenda and is made to the public. So I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie accept the 2022 emergency plan and authorize administration to send the plan and accompanying resolution to EMO.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And there being no further business, the special meeting council is adjourned at 12:28 p.m. a.m. p.m.